Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another red inks comparison video, and this is red inks comparison number 6. So I think with that, let's go and swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me when I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over. I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here is an Akkerman ink, and it's Akkerman Staten Generaal Rood. So I think let's do an ink swatch here. And this is an interesting red. It's a red that I haven't used all that much, and I don't know why. I think it might be because it comes out a little bit more of a pinkish red. So we'll do a second half pass here on the top half, just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, and a dry and a narrow writing nib. And the ink here is Akkerman, and this is Staten Generaal Rood. So Staten Generaal Rood. But it will be interesting to see how this ink dries and whether or not maybe I can convince myself to actually start writing with this ink a little bit more. The next ink here is Deatramentis, and it's Deepwarter Obsession, which is a black-red ink. So we'll do an ink swatch here. And again, this is just an ink that it was actually gifted from a friend when we met up at the London Pen Show a number of years ago, actually. I haven't seen him back there. We'll do a second pass over the top half, just to show the difference between a wet or a broad and a narrow and a dry writing nib. So this is D, Deatramentis, and it is Deepwarter Obsession. So Obsession. But that actually does look quite a nice writing colour. Now, it's gonna be interesting to see if there's any sheen here, because you can probably see here around those threads in that bottle there is some gold sheen. I have not ever seen gold sheen on this ink. I did write the name of the ink there in more of a wet. I tried to saturate the feed a little bit more so that you could try and see that there in a little bit more detail. The next ink here is Rohrer and Klingner, and this is Alt-Bordeaux or Old Bordeaux. So again, Bordeaux is a red ink, although I typically find it's more of a much darker coloured ink. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and I've just got a whole load of ink over my fingers. And you can see there that is an interesting colour. The second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib. Now we will do a writing sample here. So this is Rohrer and Klingner, and it is Alt or Old Bordeaux. And I typically do think this a little bit more like a black-red coloured ink. The next ink here is a DIamine Inkvent calendar ink, and this is DIamine Ho Ho Ho. So we'll do an ink swatch here. And this is one of two of the Inkvent inks that I decided to buy. I never got the calendar in the end. And I honestly would really prefer to see the ink properly before buying a bottle. So I'm not really one to sort of go all out into buying Inkvent calendars. Although I do know that they can be pretty popular amongst the community. I just think that they are a little bit overpriced for what they are. And you can get a couple of really good bottles of ink. So this is DIamine, and it's Ho Ho Ho. And what I was actually saying, I'll finish the sentence. I think for the price of the Inkvent calendar, you could actually get a couple of nice bottles of ink, and you could end up with probably maybe 4 80ml bottles instead of actually buying the Inkvent calendar. But equally, I do know that Inkvent calendar is actually something that a lot of people buy, and a lot of retailers do actually sell out each year. And then the last ink here is another Inkvent ink here from DIamine, and this is DIamine Fire Embers. So this is the other ink that I do like out of the original Christmas Inkvent series of inks. This really is, they call it the blue edition. So if you're looking for it, look out for the blue edition. We'll do a second half over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad and a dry and a narrow writing nib. And this is DIamine, and it is Fire Embers, which I typically think of as an orange ink, and you can see the ink here, but it does have a lot of red to it, so that's why I did include it in this ink comparison video, because I do think it is a red ink. I just think it's a little bit more on the orangey side of the red. So I think let's now take a look at the inks in a little bit more detail now that they have dried. So the first ink here is Akkerman, Staten, Generaal, Rood. And this is not a Dutch Masters ink. It's in the regular 60 ml bottle. This is a bit of an interesting red. It's a little bit more on the, I want to say, more pinker side of red. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you can. There is quite a bit of a difference. There's still a little bit of wetness here in the pulled area. There is shading going on as well in this ink. It's just a little bit more of a pinkish, blackish red, I would say. Maybe more on the pink side of red. Now, can you see any sheen here? There is a little bit of sheen around the edge here. Just really not a lot, really. So you're not going to see a huge amount there. The writing sample, though, is actually quite a nice muted red, I would say. Again, a little bit more of a pinkish red. The next thing here is Deatramentis Deepwarter Obsession. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, definitely you can. There is a huge contrast there between the two. Can you see shading going on? There definitely is shading in that pulled area of ink. And can you see any sheen? Now, I'm trying really hard to look at this, and I really don't see any sheen there. So I was hoping that I would see some sheen, because there was some sheen around the cap threads of that bottle in the cap itself. So I was kind of hoping that there might be some sheen. There certainly isn't sheen. I don't think. Let me just double check. There isn't sheen on the writing sample either. So yeah, it's really, it can sheen. It is an ink that can sheen, but this is on Tomoe River. So if you're not going to see sheen here, then you're probably not going to see it on any other paper. The next ink here is Rohrer and Klingner. This is Alt-Bordeaux. Now, this is becoming a lot more, as we go along here on these three inks, a little bit more towards the red-black of the spectrum. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Definitely you can. The lighter version here is a lot lighter for what would be a dry writing nib. I've also used a wet writing nib here, so you're seeing the same sort of colour that you would see at the top half here. Now, there is some shading going on, again, in the pulled area. Is there any sheen going on there? I'd have to say no. Again, it kind of wants to break out into a sheen. It's just not able to do so. And likewise, in the writing sample there as well, you're not seeing any sheen. Now, back to the traditional colours of red that I would normally associate with red. We have here DIamine Ho Ho Ho, and this is from the Inkvent Blue Edition. And this was an ink that I just saw the brightness red colour, and I just figured that I would have to buy it, and I do like bright red. So, can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? I would say no here, because you really cannot see a lot of difference at all. Can you see shading going on? You can, certainly in pulled areas as well. Can you see any sheen? Now, again, I want to say that Ho 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 is trying to break out in a sheen. I see a little bit of a film, a goldiness colour across the top half here, but there is no like bright gold sheen. So again, it's an ink that is on the border of sheening, just maybe not quite able to sheen. And then the last ink here is DIamine Fire Embers, which again is part of the Inkvent Blue edition of inks, and this was an ink that I bought early on when it came out. Again, I liked the punchiness of the red here. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? You can see a little bit of a difference here. It's certainly a little bit more brighter, maybe orangey, if it's in a single pass here. So this will be a dry writing nib. Obviously, the nib that I wrote with was a wet writing nib. Can you see shading? You can around the pulled area. And can you see sheen? Again, I'd love to say, yes, I'm seeing a slight film of gold over the top there, but again, it's just not able to sheen. You don't typically see a lot of sheen from red inks or orange inks, but there are exceptions. Pilot Roshizuku Momiji is a beautiful red that has a beautiful green or goldish green sheen to it. And then I'm just trying to think of other red inks. Well, there's orange ink, so that you would have like Sailor Gentle Apricot or Sailor Kinmakusai that does have a little bit of sheen, gold sheen to it as well. So that's my red inks comparison number 6 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, then do let me know in the comments below. And likewise, if there are any other red inks you think I should check out that maybe I haven't checked out already, then do let me know in the comments below. So this is my red inks comparison number 6 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.